This is sponsored by LEAP, which is Linking Educators and Parents, a steering committee, a group of people that have met over the years to talk about kids and adults who learn differently and how can we best help that bridge get stronger and be built so it lasts and it's healthy and it's whole. People on the committee, Leslie Sullivan, who you'll meet in a minute, is with us in LEAP. Cynthia Johnson, who's in speech and hearing, professor at the University of Illinois, is on the committee. Sarah Castle, who's our parent, although some of us are parents also, but is on our committee. And our esteemed Marilyn Kay. Applaud that, will you please?
My name is Tina Miller. I was diagnosed with dyslexia the summer between my first and first grade. I currently work for the University of Illinois in accounts payable. I am the analytics and operations coordinator. I'm also the database analysis and database builder. That's my professional hat. My personal hat, I am a lifelong diagnosed dyslexic who wants to educate people about dyslexia. And I've also just been, well, not just been, but I've been a member of the reading group board for about 6 months.
My name's John Dixon. I'm the photo editor at the News Gazette. I'm a lifelong member of the Champaign-Urbana community. I've never been diagnosed with dyslexia, but I've been told that I have it, and I seem to exhibit most of the symptoms of it. I'm a parent and a grandparent, and I guess I'm a visual learner.
Hello, my name is Leslie Sullivan, and I'm an educator here in Champaign, actually, Unit 4. I was a classroom teacher and then went on to get my master's degree in special education and have been working in the field of special education ever since, probably for the past 15, 16 years. I too am dyslexic, undiagnosed, but really I've diagnosed myself. My area of, and I never use the term expertise, the area that I feel most comfortable with and what I've done most of my research on is in the field of dyslexia. In doing so, I learned a lot about myself and my family members, and just recently had my niece was just diagnosed with dyslexia as well. So that's my background.
And personally?
Oh, personally, I'm a teacher.
You got kids?
Oh, absolutely, yes. I have 2 boys, a 22-year-old that just graduated from college and has a job, and a very good one. And then I have an 18-year-old son that's in college and playing baseball as we speak, and a husband that I never see.
Thank you. Who's the legislator?
He is, yes.
In the state of Illinois.
Yes.
If you want anything done in the state, write it.
Oh, please.
Well, no, don't write it, I guess. I don't know. Maybe Alan.
My name is Alan Byler. I was a building contractor for 40 years in Champaign-Urbana. I didn't know that I had dyslexia until I was in my second time around in college at the University of Illinois, and an article came out in the paper in 1956 describing the malady from which I suffered all these years. What I just thought I wasn't bright prior to that until somebody described exactly the symptoms of dyslexia. And I am now 86 years old, and I'm still dyslexic. It's not like a common cold. You don't get over it. You have it the rest of your life. I have 4 children. 3 of my children have symptoms lesser than mine. I never met another dyslexic that was exactly like I am, because I display it as a function of my personality and my life experience, which means it shows up differently in me than it does anybody else that I've run across. My gifts have been 3-dimensional all my life: art, the ability to make things, construct things, and see things in 3 dimension in my head.
Thanks, Alan. Thank you. I don't know who wants to start and embellish a little bit more about your story and what you noticed about school and home and a little bit of that. Who'd like to start that off?
You know, I didn't find out I had dyslexia until I was probably an adult with children. My wife is a voracious reader, and my kids would see her reading every night, and I didn't want them to see me not reading. I wanted to be a good example. And but I couldn't read. I made it through school by kind of being the class clown. I find it kind of ironic, first of all, that I'm in a library tonight because books are my enemy. But I've never really talked to many other dyslexics. Already tonight, just in casual conversation, I've found out that I have a lot in common with these folks here at the table, and I'm sure with other people out in the audience. You know, school was always a difficult thing for me. I'm not a book learner, obviously. And I don't think I knew that there was anything wrong with me, but I did finally start to dawn on me that I guess I must be stupid. And finally, I did go to college, and I find it amazing that people can get through college with dyslexia, because I sure couldn't. As a freshman in college at Ohio State University, there's one class called Botany Zoology 110, and it's supposed to be the toughest class for the freshmen to take, and I took it in the second semester. And I decided, you know, I'm going to find out if I'm really stupid, because I really wasn't doing very well in the other classes. So I committed myself to trying to do all the reading, because people had always told me that the answers were in the book, and I couldn't believe it because I couldn't get through the book. And so I made myself do the reading very painfully through that semester, and I got a B+ in the class, and I thought, boy, I must not be stupid. Then I put the books down, because it's still, even casual reading for me is a difficult thing to do. Like I said before, I think I'm a visual learner. If you show me how to do something, I can figure out a way to do it. Thank God for Google. I can't read an instruction manual of any kind with any competency. And I have to do a lot of work with software and different software programs and computers. And if I couldn't Google this software and this problem, and somebody else has already done it on YouTube and they'll show me, I would be lost without it.
Thanks, Jen. Tina, you've already identified yourself as one of the only ones who early on was diagnosed.
Yes.
So that's in and of itself kind of interesting, because this wasn't yesterday, some years ago. I'm not, did I say that again?
Some years ago.
But some, yeah. So anyway, your story.
Well, I was blessed by having a mother who was an educator. So she saw me in preschool, not being able to write very well, first grade, still not being able to write very well. In fact, I wrote most of my letters backwards. I wrote from left to right, but almost every single letter was backwards, because in my mind, it looked fine to me. The teacher I had wanted just to push me off. She's lazy, she'll get over it. I was acting out because when you're in first grade, you don't know how to verbalize your frustration. You only know how to outwardly react to your frustration. So if I was kind of being annoying in class, or I'd fall asleep in class because it just got to the point I couldn't follow along. So I just fall asleep. So finally my mom said, no, there's something wrong here. I see how hard she's working. So she actually got me over to the U of I and got me, or Carl, and got me tested. And they said, yes, she has dyslexia. What are you going to do about it? So I repeated first grade. And when you're in the same school, same little school, Dr. Howard, if you repeat a grade, everybody knows about it. And you become the butt of every single joke for the entire next year, and the year after, and the year after, until the class you started with is finally gone. It didn't get better. In fact, it got worse. Recently I was going through I call it my dyslexic book, and it's all the standard aptitude tests that all the kids take. And my mom kept a lot of stuff from me because she knew if I heard any of this, I would have been devastated. In 5th grade, in reading, I was the 2nd percentile. That means 2% of all the national average was below me. That means 98% of the kids were above me. And if you tell that to a kid, the kid's just going to give up. But my mom didn't say that. She said, you did so good at math. I did above average in math. I did above average in science. I did above average in anything that I can get my hands on. I did above average in. It was the reading, it was the spelling, it was the trying to get words to come off the page that would make any sense. When I would read word, word, word with no context. It would just be words. I couldn't put it together in a story. I couldn't put it together in a stream of thought. So back to my mom, she had a brother who, when he was young, lost his sight. So when growing up, she would remember sitting around listening to books on tape. So it's called RFB, Reading for the Blind. So she got me involved in that. So I started listening to books, audiobooks, and I fell in love. It just, words weren't popping off the page, they were entering into my ears, and I would realize, I would actually understand what was going on. I would have full understanding. So once we started to establish that I was an audio hearer, I was an audio learner, we started getting books, my textbooks on tape. We would start doing things like untimed tests. So I wasn't limited by the 35 minutes you have in class to do an essay. I can go in and I can do the test, I can do the essay with however long I needed to take to get those words out of my head onto paper. It got better, and slowly, surely, I started, I think it was in 4th, 5th grade, I started working with Marilyn Kay at the reading group, and they taught me other ways, not how to learn how to read, but to learn how to learn, because that was my issue. I could learn, but I wasn't learning how they were teaching me, how the regular mainstream teachers.
I thought I was a normal kid until I got to the 1st and 2nd grade, and I discovered when I tried to learn to read and to spell that I wasn't a normal kid. I wasn't like everybody else, and it was a real difficult experience for me. I had a mother who was an English teacher and a father who was a science teacher and an administrator of a large high school in Chicago. I had a brother and sister who were exceptionally bright, and they preceded me through school. So when I came along, the teachers said, well, what's wrong with Alan? Mm-hmm. How come? And the problem was that my father, who passed me the bum gene, never understood and blamed me for being not bright like my brother and sister. And my mother, who was an English teacher, didn't know how to fix me, but she knew how to love me, and she loved me the best she could, and tried to teach me how to read and to spell. My brother ended up being dean in the School of Arts and Science in Southern, and my sister was the best lab technician going through Northwestern at the time. And I was trying to figure out how to learn how to read. I wanted to drop out of school at age 16. I was so miserable in school. And one of the things that happened was that I took typing. I had to take typing, it was required. And in typing, the number of words that you misspelled were subtracted from the number of words that you could type in a minute. And as a result, the teacher would take these orally, and where everybody was giving 15, 20, 25 words a minute, I was giving 2. Mm-hmm. And that was an experience that was so excruciating that I, to this day, will not use a keyboard on a computer, because I am so upset by that whole experience of keyboard. When I did have to type, I had to pick up one from a piece of paper, one letter at a time, and move over and type it, and then go back for the next letter, because I couldn't pick up a group of letters or the whole word and type it in. So it was just not a gift that I could manage. I went to college because my mother insisted that I go to college, and she said, "I'll help you if you just go." And it turned out that the only course I could take in the college I went to that didn't require a foreign language was a science major, which meant more than half of your hours, considerably more than half of your hours, had to be in science. But science was relatively easy for me. As a matter of fact, I majored in chemistry, and chemistry is a rational subject. Spelling is an irrational subject. And so, because it was a rational subject and you could always count on it being the same always, I could do chemistry without any difficulty. But my problem really wasn't that I didn't want to be a chemist and I didn't want to be in science. So after the Korean War, I came back on the GI Bill and went to the University of Illinois to learn to study architecture, which I did for a couple of years for the purpose of learning what architects know in terms of design and structure, but for the purpose of going into the building business, because I love to make things. I love to make things from the time I was a little boy. And my parents gave me tools with which to work. I had a lathe when I was 14, and I made billy clubs and baseball bats and gavels and all sorts of things. So I always was good at making things with my hands, three-dimensional sort of thing. And as it turns out, to be a contractor, three-dimensional gifts are a real advantage. It's easy to see in my head what a house will look like standing up in 3 dimensions and figure the amount of material it'll take to build it, because I can see what it takes. And so that was my experience growing up, and I struggled along learning how to live with my disability.
Who helped you and how? What was the pivotal moment? And this isn't the story time, so I'm asking if you could nugget this a bit. And then I'm going to ask you what didn't help you so much, and then it's yours. So what helped you the most? If you could nugget that, what would you say?
Well, in my life, I've just been blessed with the right people at the right moment who would just not give up on me. And whether it was Boy Scouts, where I could learn to do things, and I'll give you the names, Milt Forsberg and Stan Rankin in Boy Scouts. They taught me how to develop film and learn how to use a camera and take pictures and turn a hobby into a profession. And then as I started to become a photographer, Kurt Beamer, who just was the greatest teacher I've ever had in my life. But I couldn't learn from a book, but he could teach me how to do things in photography. Like Alan was saying, he was good at chemistry. In photography, a lot of it was trial and error, run into a roadblock, figure out what you did wrong, go back and do it again. And if you're persistent, you can do it. And I had plenty of time to do that because I wasn't reading books. And most everybody that wasn't good at photography would get frustrated by the hurdles they ran into, and they'd go read a book. And that, I had to find something that I could be successful at. I had a wonderful counselor in high school, Mrs. Rodemaker, Helen Rodemaker. And at the moment in my life when I needed somebody to say, what are you going to be when you grow up? Hell, I was 15 years old. I had no idea what I was going to be when I was going to grow up, and frankly, I didn't want to talk about it. But she wouldn't let me leave her office until I told her, and out of the blue, I just said, I want to be a photojournalist, just to make her be quiet so I could go away, And so she went through her Rolodex, and she called Harold Holmes at the News Gazette. He was the editor of the News Gazette at that time. And she did the same thing to him. She wouldn't let him off the phone until he said, send him over. And then when I tried to be an example to my children with reading, one of my coworkers' wives, Lori Dye, she was a reading teacher in Unit 4, and she said, I think you have dyslexia. And I was like, well, what's dyslexia? And she said, well, I think it's, what you talk about where you have to read every word, and you get stuck on words and you change the words around. You come and I'll give you a test. Oh, great, I love tests. And so she gave me a test, and it was like, yeah, you've got dyslexia. You need to go get some adult reading classes. So then I went to the reading group, and I forget my teacher's name, but he was terrific, and taught. Well, I still got to read every word, but the most important thing for me was if it's a capitalized word in the middle of a sentence, it doesn't matter how you pronounce it. I had to try to figure out, how do you pronounce Flugawugawitz? You know, he says, just, it's a person, place, or a thing. Just make up a name and go on. I couldn't go on. I always had to get every word just right. And so, you know, I've just had the very fortunate experience of having people in the right moment, in the right place, at the right time in my life. And hopefully for everybody else, they have the same experience. I'm not sure that's true.
And out of that resource and persistence and resilience comes a awfully talented photographer. What helped the most?
When I was 12 years old, somebody built a house across the street from where I lived. School was acting out for me, the teachers were acting out that I was a dumb kid and that I wasn't going anywhere. But across the street where the house was being built, there were about 4 real first-class carpenter guys who allowed me to come over and invited me up on the scaffold, and they acted out, you're really a neat kid. You can saw boards and you can nail, and we think that you're really an outstanding kid. And they did for me what school wasn't doing for me, and that was they made me feel like I was worth something. And I remember I was up on the roof, and a woman came by, and she said to one of the carpenters, "Do you see that little boy up there on that roof?" And I remember yet to this day, he said, "Lady, when that boy falls off that roof, we'll all be on the ground." And that was a statement about my abilities, my worth. And so I was dealing with a terrible sense of inferiority, and I was looking for somebody who thought I was worthwhile. And that, along with my mother's persistent love, is what changed my life.
Thank you. Leslie, a nugget. Thank you.
And it's going to be a nugget. I think the prevailing theme is what I'm hearing here is there was someone in our life, and I had more than one person, but in a nutshell, my mother and my aunt, who was also a teacher, who worked with me as well, and who believed in me, and I had a good support system. So I think that truly was instrumental for me in just knowing that I could do whatever I set my mind to.
Thanks.
And I did.
Thanks. And I hope some of this resonates and captures. The one thing that you would caution us to not do as parents or educators, you get one sentence. So parents and educators sitting in this audience, please try not to do this. One sentence.
Do not underestimate any child.
Thanks. Thought, John?
Don't give up.
Thanks.
Don't stereotype. That's
Thanks.
Amy.
Are you hearing these? Don't stereotype. So be careful about making, well, she can't read, so therefore she's inadequate in lots of things, I guess.
Don't make your child feel worthless. Inferiority.
Thanks. A takeaway thought, Tina, John, Leslie, Alan, takeaway thought.
Takeaway thought, your kids aren't broken. They just think differently than you and think differently from the mainstream classroom.
Thanks. John?
Well, don't give up. It's really hard when you feel that your child's different somehow. It feels like somebody's kicking you in the gut. And it's not easy on the children either. But if you, first of all, it seems to me I should have been sitting in those seats, not in this seat. I'm not an expert in this.
You are, you live it.
Ah.
You live it.
But if you, I know that growing up, as I started to think that, boy, I must be dumb because I just don't get it. And I can't find a way to figure out how to read. And that seems to be a really basic skill that most of my friends have. One of my best friends in life, John Frasca, is brilliant. And, you know, we were side by side through our school career till we got to college. And John was always in the smart class and I was always in the dumb class. But he never held it against me. And to watch somebody succeed when I couldn't, it didn't make me feel bad, but as time went on, I think I developed a real self-esteem problem. So if you can find those things that your children can be successful at, until they can overcome some of the challenges of dyslexia and learn those coping skills, if you can give them that bright spot where they can succeed and they can show you that they can do it, I think that would be tremendously important.
Thank you. Leslie?
And I just want to say dyslexia is more common than you think. It affects about 15 to 20% of the population. I think the fact that putting a name to something does kind of normalize it for children. There's so many people out there, famous people, non-famous people, that also have dyslexia. So let your children know they are not alone by any stretch of the imagination. And in any given classroom on any given day, there are 3 to 6 children sitting in that classroom that have the same struggles that your children do. And that's the truth. And I think that's why it can seem very overwhelming for the teachers that are teaching, because there are so many children that are struggling. But that being said, I do agree with what everybody here has said too. If at all possible, expose your children to as much as you possibly can and find something that, I'm not going to say that they excel at, we don't excel at everything, but something that they're good at and they feel good about themselves doing, because that's real important.
Thank you. Alan?
You're lucky to be in school at this time because
Sure.
there are more people who know more about how people learn with learning disabilities than there ever was before. I lectured teachers across the state of Illinois about learning disabilities in the 70s, and I had teachers come up and say, I don't believe there is such a thing as a learning disability. So we're a long ways along in this road, and there's bound to be a teacher somewhere for your child. It may not be the one that you're struggling with now, but you'll find one if you keep looking.
Thanks.